All right, thanks for joining in, everybody. This episode, we are taking a step back to what both of us consider the golden era of horror. And yes, we are talking about the 80s. And this is a little bit late in the 80s, but we're talking about 1987's Slaughterhouse.
Yeah, I remember this one quite a bit. I know I usually start off each one of our episodes kind of talking about my earliest memories of the film we're talking about. And Slaughterhouse came out. I remember seeing it in the video store. I remember the box art very well at this little mom and pop video store down the road from me. And it was one of those films, like it was sort of like a newer one at the time, like those late 80s horror films. And I remember picking it up, checking it out, and like, oh, what's this? And I never saw it. Never saw it up until a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I do remember this is one of the ones that the box art just always seems to stick out in your head because I think you had said when I suggested it, like just the name alone, you're like, oh, I know what movie you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And then you just have that like image in your head of like just this burly guy with this giant meat cleaver axe looking thing hanging down.
Yes.
So the one thing I will say about this movie is, yeah, this was the first time viewing for me too. And I kind of want to get your feel for this because I think it will help set the tone for maybe the episode or maybe even help others in the future. Because I would assume too, we're not the only two that have never seen this before now. Because I don't think this was, I mean, Slaughterhouse isn't a movie that I hear chatter about really ever, so I can't say that it's a huge cult following, but maybe it does have a huge cult following. I don't know. But anyway, here's the one thing I want to ask you right off the beginning. Mm-hmm. When you were watching this, did you feel like you were watching a slasher movie or not?
I felt like I was watching a late 80s, been there, done that slasher movie, yes. Okay.
Because the only thing that's like my only real complaint with this movie is from the cover art, you assume it's a slasher movie, and it kind of starts off with the feel of a slasher movie, and then there's a lot of nothing happens for a while, and then it gets to a point where it's kind of like it's not sure if it wants to be a slasher movie or not. But so then it has like these other parts of it that are kind of like slasherish, but then it's like trying to do this weird like thriller thing, and you're just like, wait, what? Is this a slasher movie or not? At least that's the feel that I had going through it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like it starts off kind of with that whole teeny bop vibe to it, where you've got a bunch of kids partying, and then you get your first like opening kill scene. So yeah, it kind of goes that way, and then it turns into this whole other story about this slaughterhouse in town is going to get shut down, and the sheriff, and he's trying to talk to them, or there's another guy that wants to buy the property, and there's all that going on, and then it becomes more like this sort of weird revenge film, right? Where it's like kind of like, well, the slaughterhouse owner wants to seek revenge on the people that are trying to shut down this place, and yeah, it gets kind of weird like that. But then you've got this group of teenagers. Yeah, it's a very interesting, weird story.
That's the only thing about it was I was like, okay, so here we go. We're settling in, getting ready, like beer and popcorn ready to go. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. Got some late 80s slasher action about ready to happen, and it opens up, and I'm like, oh, perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. And then a couple minutes later, I'm like, wait, what's going on? I thought I was watching a slasher movie. And then it gets a little bit later, and you're like, oh, cool, slasher movie. And then it's not a slasher movie, and then it's like, I was like, all right, whatever. It's definitely seems like they weren't sure what they were doing with it anyway.
Yeah, the late 80s was a weird time because, again, this is towards the kind of the approaching the end of the slasher era, and there had been so much of it out there. There had been, obviously, the Friday the 13th franchise and Nightmare on Elm Street, all of that stuff was already kind of done and gone. So there was nothing new, really, that was going to come out at this point. I don't think in the slasher era. This is like, them they were trying to pull out this new character, this buddy character, which is like basically a kind of a rip on Leatherface, really, is what it was. It's just kind of this big hillbilly guy with a big giant meat cleaver. And I think that, like, I remember even with like the box art, I think there was something about some mention of Buddy, like the name, like, Buddy's pissed and, something like that. And I think like that's what they were hoping to do, is kind of build this new, maybe like a B-level franchise on that character. And I will say though, we got to admit, like, this is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre ripoff, if I've ever seen one, right? I mean, that's really what this is.
Because we say this all the time too, is with a lot of these movies, you can kind of tell that whatever era it was filmed in just by certain context clues in the movie. And this one's kind of weird because even though it feels like a late 80s movie, it has all these other weird aspects to it that give it this other, these other weird, early 80s vibes to it. Mm-hmm. It's just weird stuff. Like, again, we grew up with the 80s movies and we watched them all the time when we were kids. And this was the first time watch for me. And so when I was watching this, and the first thing that you see is this weird quote from Benjamin Franklin, and you're like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. Or at least it was on the version that I watched.
Yeah.
And then it starts with this weird big band, poppy, kind of real happy, uplifting music during the opening montage, And
yeah.
I'm just like, oh, this is weird. And that actually reminded me more of just that weird, the music itself more than anything reminded me of My Bloody Valentine. Because weren't they if in the opening of that, weren't they all yeah, let's go, when they were leaving the mine and going to the bar and the party and stuff?
Yeah, they play some kind of this old classic early 80s country stuff.
Oh, that's what it, yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of the same thing, yeah, let's go. And, they're all doing the burnouts in the dirt parking lot or whatever. But anyway, yeah, it was just the whole opening was kind of weird. And then they show this real I mean, it's not it's really gory or gross or anything, mm-hmm. but they show real slaughterhouse footage in mm-hmm. here, and it's it's just certain aspects of it made it seem older than it was.
Yeah, and it seemed too the quality of the film was bad, which that actually kind of surprised me, because when I'm thinking late 80s, you're looking at the later Nightmare on Elm Street films, I think 4 and 5, and you're thinking Halloween 4, and you're thinking, and there's a certain look that those films have on screen, and yeah, it was just, it kind of this was a very low budget filming, or camera work or whatever they used to film this. It was very, it did have more it was grainier, mm-hmm. It just didn't seem like it was, it seemed it reminded me of if you watch one of those early 80s B movies, mm-hmm. where it's just kind of grainy, kind of off, Basket Case or something like that.
Yeah.
It seemed like it was more whatever camera they used to film this was more along the lines of that than at late 80s, where it's a little bit more polished by that time.
Yeah, that's where I think it was, because it had that feel to it exactly, which is what I was saying a couple episodes, well, depending on when this comes out compared to whenever we were talking about this comes out.
Yeah.
But, that's one of the complaints that I have with not all modern horror, but some modern horror, especially slashers and stuff, is there's something about certain films that you don't want in necessarily high def, 4K or 8K or 16K or whatever the hell resolution,
Yeah.
I don't need it to be crystal clear. A little grainy is kind of cool sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just reminded, like you said, just some of those cheaper movies from the early 80s. It made me think of I already said My Bloody Valentine, but another one that kind of made me think of just a real cheapo movie was Sleepaway Camp, or some of those other ones. Just real cheap. I would be curious if there is a offset of horror fans that prefer like the villain in like a slasher type movie like this, or another one that I was thinking of that was sort of not necessarily like this one, but that had like the bad guys, if you will, that weren't masked, but they always seemed to be like disformed a little bit in some way. Like this guy, he wasn't really deformed, but you could tell he was kind of supposed to be like slower than normal, if you will.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there's like, if there's like a group of people that is like the huge thing for them. They're like, screw that. We don't want any Michael Myers masks around here. We want to see our killer's face the entire time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the one thing going back with that, that scene where he he kills that teenager and he gets the mask from him, and it's that weird, like, I don't know what it's supposed to be, like some guy's face, and it's real weird, and he puts it on and he's wearing it, and it's when the girl's like laying on the table, and they show like that, the camera's like looking up at him. Mm-hmm. Remember that scene?
Yep.
Well, there's a still of that scene on the back of the VHS box, and I remember as a kid thinking that was supposed to be like a skin face, kind of like Leatherface, and I was like, oh, they're really going all the way out here. Like, this is like a total like rip off of Leatherface. I knew instantly when you look at the cover, it's this big heavy set dude with a machete or a cleaver, and calling it Slaughterhouse. Of like, yeah, this is like a Leatherface rip off type of thing. And yeah, so this one, yeah, they don't do the mask. They try to give him this like kind of use his face for the personality and whatnot. Let's be realistic. As soon as you watch this movie, as soon as you turn it on, and as soon as you see like the farmhouse where the killer lives, the first shot where the sheriff and like the business guy go there and kind of looking around the property, and you see like all the dead animals and the bones hanging. I'm like, could you rip off Texas Chainsaw Massacre any more than that? It's like clearly that's what they were doing. And yeah, and they were trying to create this new character based off of that. But they also had like kind of that little bit more of that humorous side, like you said with that intro. Like they were trying to play it a little bit more tongue in cheek in some areas.
Yeah.
And it kind of like that, almost like it was almost like they were like going with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 vibe. Let's make this kind of goofy, but let's try to make it scary, sort of, but at the same time we're going to add a lot of goofballness to this film. And that's sort of where they went with it.
Right. And I think that's where it kind of lost some of that slasher feel that I was talking about before.
Okay.
And I think it was because of that, because I think they were trying to not take it so serious at times.
Yeah.
But then what was weird with it is I actually commented on this after I watched it, like, I guess really to myself more than anything. But the one thing that I noticed that they did a couple of times in here was they did show some gore, but it seemed like, I don't know if, like you'd said, if they were aware of what they were dealing with at the time or not. But it seemed like to me there was a couple of the like kills where they didn't really show anything, but then they seemed to like linger on. I just remember like one scene where they were like, I can't remember exactly how it happened, but the camera like panned down rather than really showing any gore, but it showed just like these feet hanging off the ground, but like, just like a little bit of blood dripping off of them. And I was like, I wonder if they did that just so like the ratings board couldn't be like, you got to cut out the gore. And then they're like, there's no gore to cut out.
Yeah. The gore in this film, actually, it like when you first run through it, it seems like it's kind of a gory film, but then when you think back to what you just saw, it's really just somebody with a bucket of fake blood throwing it at the camera.
Yeah.
That's all you got, and like, he's like, there's no real special effects here. I mean, there's that one scene with the police officer, the deputy, and he gets his hand stuck, and then he cuts his hand off, and you've got the or the cut off hand or whatever. But like for the most part, it's really just like this guy running around with a fake cleaver, smacking people with it, and then somebody on the sound stage or whatever is throwing a bucket of blood on the screen to make you look like, oh my gosh, this is a gory film. I mean, this is low rent special effects. for sure.
Oh, too funny. Could you imagine that's probably, somebody somewhere was probably like, hey, you know what? Let's come up with this. They have all of this real great equipment for movies now. They have like the Steadicam and all this other stuff. I came up with this great blood bucket throwing machine, and everybody's like, what do you get that for? That's what the interns are for. They just run around and throw blood at the camera.
Right, exactly.
But I'll tell you, I would rather have that, like, ridiculous amounts of blood dripping through the window pane, which is typically how they kind of do it in these movies, than having a fake CGI blood splatter.
I totally agree with you with that. And even in this one, where this is like terribly done special effects, where it's just bad. I still prefer doing it this way than had they have done like a animated zombies like blood splatter. So this, so you got that going on here. I gotta say though, one thing I want to just bring up real quick too is the main girl in this film, the actress, terrible, just absolutely terrible. I mean, okay, all of the acting in this movie is terrible. Okay, let's get that, let's take care of that right off the bat. But she took terrible to a whole new level. Like, there is no reason she should have been even well, I guess this film, that's okay for her to be in. But, she has never gotten another role since this.
When you, as soon as you, pointed out the one person, I was like, wait, maybe you were watching something different, because I'm pretty sure everybody was a bad actor in this.
Yeah, no, they were terrible. They were all terrible. And then the cop, hit the deputy, the blonde guy that kind of looked like a low rent version of Johnny Lawrence from The Karate Kid. His death scene, his acting in that was just terrible. Like the whole when he gets his hand cut off and he's falls over, and it's just so bad. I mean, again, it's I don't know, was it the acting? Was it the directing? Was it everything? Was it the writing? It was everything, all of the above. So it was bad.
Well, this might be a bit of a shocker then. So with all of that negativity said, I'll say this. I'm glad that I finally got this one under my belt. This is one of those movies that, like we said when we were kids, we saw in the video store all the time. And it was, like you'd said, it was one of these ones too that it was late enough. I don't remember ever being aware ooh, Slaughterhouse is coming out, or ooh, Slaughterhouse is new at the video store. But it was one of those ones that it was late enough to where when it was new at the video, when it showed up on the horror shelves, it was noticed eventually, ooh, that looks kind of cool. But yeah, for me, I don't remember if I ever looked at the back of the box when I was a kid. I would imagine I probably did. So I don't know if there would have been anything on the back of the box that would have made me go ooh, or go, ugh. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But anyway, like I said, I'm glad that I watched it. I'm glad I got it out of the way. I probably won't be rushing to watch it again anytime soon. But I'm going to go ahead and give it just a little tiny bit of a thumbs up. I didn't hate watching it, even though I wasn't sure if I was watching a slasher movie or not. It was an enjoyable time watching it. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen it, I'd say check it out.
So I would say, after watching this film, I remembered, again, like you said, the box art. I never saw it back in the day. It was something that it did intrigue me, but I never got around to watching it. It was always kind of in the back of my head. I wanted to find another, beer and popcorn movie, something that, not something that you don't really have to think about, and just kind of a stupid, 80s horror film and just to throw on in the background. And that's what I was hoping for with this. I didn't have my hopes, too high, and it's turned out to be a lot worse than I had anticipated. So I have to give it a pretty big thumbs down, because I wouldn't recommend it. Because when I get a bad movie, if it's bad in the sense that, yeah, it's a bad movie, but I can picture myself maybe watching it again, on a bored at home alone or whatever, then yeah, this might work. But this one I will never watch again. So I have to say, I just have to give it a big thumbs down.